In a city where beauty dazzles and danger hides in the shadows, Marcus Johnson is just another face in the crowd. A black paramedic, he spends his days rushing through chaos, saving lives without ever asking for recognition. Emily Carter, a white supermodel, commands attention everywhere she goes but battles her own silent demons. When fate throws them together on a night that could shatter Emily's world forever, Marcus steps into a role he never imagined: hero. But this act of bravery will ignite a storm of prejudice, secrets, and unexpected alliances. In a society quick to judge, can courage and compassion break the walls of racism and mistrust? Or will the past and present collide to tear everything apart? Marcus Johnson woke up early, just before the first blush of dawn touched the Chicago skyline. The small fan on his nightstand struggled against the rising summer heat, humming softly in the quiet room. He lay for a moment staring at the cracked ceiling, the weight of the day already pressing on his chest. The familiar ache wasn't just from exhaustion, it was the invisible burden of being a black man working in a city that often judged him before knowing him. At 32, Marcus was a paramedic with the city's emergency medical services. His job was relentless, unpredictable, and at times thankless. But it was also what gave him purpose, a chance to make a difference in moments when life and death hung in the balance. Yet every day was a reminder that his uniform wasn't just a symbol of saving lives, it was a shield he needed against suspicion, bias, and the silent prejudices that followed him everywhere. Marcus swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood. The apartment was modest but tidied: bare walls, a worn couch, and a small kitchen with a fridge full of takeout containers. His phone lit up with a text from his younger sister, Kayla: "Good luck today. Proud of you." Her words were a small beacon of warmth in a world that often felt cold. Across the city, under the bright neon lights of Chicago's upscale fashion district, Emily Carter was starting her day in a very different world. At 27, she was one of the most sought-after models in the industry, a name that sparkled in glossy magazines and graced the covers of international fashion spreads. But behind the perfectly styled hair and flawless makeup was a woman carrying an invisible weight of loneliness and pressure. Emily stood in front of her full-length mirror, adjusting the silk gown that clung to her slender frame. The room buzzed with the soft chatter of stylists and photographers preparing for a high-profile shoot. Yet despite the glamour, Emily's eyes betrayed exhaustion. Every smile she wore for the cameras was carefully constructed, a mask she learned to perfect. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Derek Simmons, her manager, was relentless. His voice on the line was both comforting and controlling, a mixture of charm and command. "Emily, remember, this shoot is crucial. It could change everything for you. Don't mess this up." Emily forced a laugh, but the knot in her stomach tightened. Derek wasn't just managing her career, he controlled her schedule, her public image, even her friendships. She often wondered if she was more a product than a person in his eyes. Back in the quiet hum of the morning, Marcus donned his uniform, tightening the belt on his utility pants and checking his medical kit one last time. His partner, Jason, was already waiting outside, leaning casually against the ambulance. "Ready for another day in the trenches?" Jason asked with a grin. Marcus returned a small smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." Their camaraderie was one of the few things that helped Marcus navigate the daily grind. Jason understood the unspoken realities, how their job wasn't just about medicine, but also about dealing with the world's harshest judgments. As they drove through the waking city streets, the radio crackled with reports of incidents, car accidents, overdoses, heart attacks. The city never slept, and neither did its emergencies. Suddenly, the tone shifted. A call came in, a medical emergency at the downtown fashion event where Emily was shooting. Marcus felt a familiar adrenaline rush. These calls were always tricky, crowded, chaotic, and under the spotlight of the media. But this one carried an extra weight. When Marcus and Jason arrived, the scene was electric with tension. Models hurried backstage, cameras flashed relentlessly, and whispers flew like wildfire. Emily lay slumped on the floor, pale and unconscious. Marcus's training kicked in. Calmly, methodically, he checked her pulse, her breathing, her vitals. The crowd parted as he worked, eyes fixed on the black paramedic who was now the center of attention. A photographer captured the moment, Marcus's strong hands stabilizing the fragile white model. The image exploded on social media overnight, sparking a storm of admiration and controversy. Some praised Marcus's heroism, calling him a symbol of hope and strength. Others, steeped in prejudice, questioned his motives, letting old biases fuel hateful comments. Meanwhile, Emily awoke in the hospital, disoriented but safe. The last thing she saw before slipping into unconsciousness was Marcus's calm face, full of quiet determination. "Hey, you're safe now," Marcus said softly. "We're going to take good care of you." For Emily, this moment was the beginning of an unexpected journey, not just of recovery, but of understanding a world far removed from the glittering facade she had known. Behind the scenes, Derek worked tirelessly to shape the narrative. The media frenzy threatened to spiral out of control, and Derek feared that Marcus's story could overshadow Emily's carefully curated image. But Marcus and Emily's lives had collided in a way that neither could ignore. Two people from vastly different worlds, connected by a fragile thread of fate, standing at the edge of a story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about courage, race, and humanity. And this was only the beginning. The sterile white walls of Mercy Hospital felt colder than usual that morning. Marcus Johnson stood outside the ICU waiting room, hands stuffed deep into his pockets, wrestling with a swirl of thoughts and emotions. The adrenaline from the rescue was already fading, replaced by the weight of what had happened and what might come next. He replayed the moment in his mind. The flash of panic on Emily's face before she collapsed. The crowd buzzing like a hive of bees backstage. The sharp intake of his breath when he realized she wasn't breathing properly. Every second mattered, every action precise. When the call came about the model's collapse, Marcus and Jason had rushed to the scene, sirens screaming through the city's arteries. Emily was unconscious, pale, barely clinging to life. Marcus had knelt beside her, ignoring the prying eyes of the photographers and the buzz of speculation. His focus was absolute open airway, check pulse, prepare for CPR. His hands worked with the skill and calmness of years of training. Chest compressions, careful breaths, the rhythm of life. The crowd parted, some gasping, others holding their phones up to capture every moment. For Marcus, none of it mattered except the fragile life in front of him. When Emily's pulse returned, relief flooded through him. Jason helped load her into the ambulance, the weight of responsibility sinking deeper. Now, standing in the hospital corridor, Marcus felt the eyes of the world pressing down on him, through news stories, social media debates, whispers, and accusations. Some hailed him a hero, others cast shadows of doubt, some veiled in racial bias. He thought about the comments flooding online, praise, hate, and everything in between. The divide in the city mirrored in digital voices. Marcus had grown used to it. Being black in America meant navigating these battles every day, in hospitals, on streets, even in the smallest interactions. Inside the ICU, Emily lay still, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily. The exhaustion of fame and pressure etched on her face, softened now by vulnerability. Her mind drifted between dreams and reality, images of bright lights fading into darkness, then the calm, steady voice of Marcus. When she finally opened her eyes, it was his face she saw first. Not Derek's reassuring smile or the sterile hospital staff, but Marcus, standing quietly at her bedside. "Hey," he said softly. "You're safe now." Emily blinked, trying to gather her thoughts. The whirlwind of her life, the endless photoshoots, the relentless demands, the loneliness masked by glamour, felt distant. In this quiet moment, with Marcus's steady presence, something unfamiliar stirred: gratitude. Trust. Backstage that day, chaos had reigned. Derek had snapped orders at his team, trying to control the narrative, ensuring Emily's career wouldn't suffer. The last thing he wanted was for a black paramedic story to overshadow his carefully constructed empire. Derek's phone buzzed constantly, calls from publicists, managers, reporters. Rumors flew. The story was already twisting, and Derek wasn't going to let it go unchecked. Meanwhile, Marcus returned home after his shift, physically exhausted but unable to switch off his mind. His phone buzzed with messages from friends and family, their pride mingled with concern. "Bro, you're all over the news," Jason joked. "And the internet's lit up like a firestorm." Marcus sighed, scrolling through headlines and comments. The praise was heartening, but the venom was familiar and painful. As night fell, Emily's thoughts circled back to Marcus, his calm in the storm, his steady hands that had saved her. She wanted to reach out but hesitated, unsure of how to cross the invisible boundaries between their worlds. But fate wasn't done with their story yet. The next morning, Marcus was called back to the hospital. Emily wanted to meet him. It was unexpected, a gesture that blurred the lines between rescuer and rescued. When they finally sat down together in a quiet hospital lounge, the air between them was thick with unspoken questions. "Thank you," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything." Marcus nodded, the weight of the moment settling in. "It was my job. But I'm glad you're okay." Their conversation was awkward at first, strangers from different worlds trying to find common ground. But beneath the surface was a growing respect and something more fragile, something tentative. As news outlets caught wind of their meeting, the story morphed again. This time, it wasn't just about a rescue, it was about race, about courage, about what happens when two lives from opposite sides of society collide. Marcus and Emily didn't know it yet, but their chance encounter was about to set off a chain of events that would challenge their beliefs, their courage, and the very fabric of their worlds. And the city was watching. The hospital's lounge was quiet, but the atmosphere between Marcus and Emily crackled with unspoken tension. Neither of them could quite place what this moment meant, but both felt its weight. Emily glanced at Marcus, her eyes searching for a way to bridge the gap between her polished life and his gritty reality. "I keep thinking about what happened. I was so careless. I never imagined something like this could happen to me." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Accidents don't care who you are. We all face moments that remind us how fragile life really is." The honesty in his voice surprised her. Beneath the hardened paramedic was a man who had seen the worst of humanity, yet still believed in the value of every life. "Thank you for saving me," she said again, her voice softer now. "More than just the rescue, for making me realize there's more to the world than my bubble." Marcus smiled, a flicker of warmth breaking through his usual reserve. Maybe we both needed that reminder. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Derek Simmons strode in, his sharp suit and confident demeanor clashing with the humble scene before him. "Emily," he said briskly, "are you ready for your next shoot? The world's waiting." Emily sighed, frustration tightening her jaw. "Derek, not now. I'm trying to talk." Derek's eyes flicked to Marcus with thinly veiled suspicion. "I see the paramedic is still here. Marcus, right? Glad to meet the man who's suddenly the city's newest celebrity." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Just doing my job." The tension was palpable. Derek's protective instincts over Emily's image clashed with Marcus's straightforward honesty. Later that day, Emily sat alone in her apartment, the city lights casting long shadows across her face. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion and awakening. Meeting Marcus had stirred something she hadn't expected, a desire to understand a world beyond the runway. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to his neighborhood in the South Side, greeted by familiar faces and wary glances. The rescue had made him a local hero, but it also drew unwanted attention. Some neighbors whispered about the spotlight, others worried about the media frenzy. "Man, you've got people talking," Jason said as they shared a late-night meal. "Not all of it good." Marcus nodded. "I know. But maybe it's time to change the story." As the days passed, their paths crossed more often, chance encounters at the hospital, brief messages, shared moments of honesty. Emily confided in Marcus about the pressures of her career, the loneliness behind the glamour, and the suffocating control Derek exerted. Marcus shared stories of his struggles, of growing up in a world that often judged him by the color of his skin rather than his character. Their unlikely friendship blossomed, a fragile thread connecting two lives that seemed worlds apart. But the outside world was watching, and not everyone was ready to accept this connection. Social media exploded with debates, some celebrating the bond as a sign of hope and unity, others spewing venomous hate, questioning Emily's choices and attacking Marcus with racist vitriol. Emily's publicist warned her of the risks. "This could ruin your career." Derek's warnings grew more urgent, his jealousy simmering beneath a polished veneer. But Emily and Marcus stood firm, determined to prove that humanity transcended prejudice. One evening, as Marcus walked Emily home through the bustling streets of Chicago, they paused beneath the glowing marquee of a theater. The city buzzed around them, alive with possibility and danger. Emily looked up at Marcus, her eyes reflecting the neon glow. "I never thought I'd find someone like you." Marcus smiled, a mixture of hope and caution. "Neither did I." Their journey was just beginning, a journey that would challenge their beliefs, test their courage, and redefine what it meant to be truly human. Because sometimes, the most unlikely bonds can change everything. The city's relentless pulse continued day and night, but for Marcus, every beat felt heavier, every moment more suffocating. The media spotlight had transformed his life in ways he never imagined, and not always for the better. His heroism was praised loudly by some, but to others, it was an invitation to unleash venomous hate. At the hospital, the place where he once found solace and purpose, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Colleagues who had once greeted him warmly now gave him cold nods or avoided eye contact altogether. Whispers floated through the corridors, some subtle, others unmistakably laced with prejudice. Marcus tried to block it out, focusing on the work he loved, saving lives. But every emergency call, every rushed procedure was tinged with an undercurrent of tension. He noticed the side glances when he entered rooms, the barely concealed skepticism in patients' eyes when they learned he was their paramedic. His phone buzzed frequently, texts from concerned friends, messages from news outlets seeking interviews, and unfortunately, a growing number of hateful replies on his social media accounts. One message stood out in its venom. "You don't belong in her world. Stay in your place." The words burned, not because they were new, but because they threatened everything Marcus was beginning to believe in, that kindness, courage, and love could overcome the deep scars of racism. Meanwhile, Emily's world was crumbling in parallel. The glamorous veneer of her modeling career hid a growing storm of public backlash. Tabloids speculated endlessly about her dangerous liaison, while her once loyal followers bombarded her with cruel comments. Her social media presence, a platform she had nurtured carefully for years, became a battleground. At every photoshoot, whispers followed her like a shadow. Sponsors reconsidered their deals, some pulled out completely. The pressure mounted relentlessly. Her manager and publicist called urgent meetings, painting dire scenarios. "Emily, this relationship is toxic for your brand," her publicist warned, voice low but firm. "You need to make a choice. It's either Marcus or your career." Emily's heart clenched. She had never imagined that following her conscience and befriending Marcus would come with such a heavy price. But backing down felt like betrayal of herself and the man who had saved her life. Derek Simmons, ever watchful and controlling, seized the moment. His jealousy simmered beneath his polished exterior, growing darker each day. One evening, after a grueling photoshoot, Emily found herself alone in her apartment, the city lights casting a lonely glow through the windows. Her phone chimed, a message from Derek. "This is your last chance, Emily. Walk away from him before it's too late." She stared at the screen, conflicted. Fear, frustration, and defiance warred inside her. The next day, Emily met Marcus at a quiet cafe downtown. The noise of the city seemed distant, as if they had stepped into a bubble apart from the chaos outside. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just for me, for you too. I don't know if we can survive this." Marcus reached across the table, his hand warm and steady over hers. "We've come too far to give up now. They want to divide us, but we have to stand together." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Marcus's sister, Tamara, a fierce woman with a protective streak as wide as the city skyline. Tamara's eyes narrowed as she surveyed Emily. "You sure about this, Marcus?" Tamara asked quietly. "She comes from a world that doesn't want us." Marcus nodded firmly. "I know the risks. But Emily's different. She's not afraid to see the truth." That night, Marcus's world grew even more complicated. While on a late-night shift, he was approached by Victor Moreno, a shadowy figure known for his influence in the city's underground. "I'm impressed with your courage," Victor said, voice low and dangerous. "But courage without caution can get you killed." You're stirring up forces that don't want change. Marcus stared him down. I'm not scared of threats. I'm scared of silence. Victor's smirk faded into a cold glare. You'll see soon enough. This city doesn't forgive. Days passed, and the threats escalated. Vandalism at the community center Marcus helped run, graffiti scrawled with hateful words. Anonymous letters slipped under Emily's door, warning her to end the relationship or face consequences. Social media attacks turned into real-life intimidation. Emily and Marcus clung to each other, but the pressure was unrelenting. One evening, returning from a fundraiser for a local youth program, they found Marcus's car vandalized, slashed tires, broken windows, a spray-painted message, "Know your place." The message was clear. Their fight was no longer just personal, it was a battle against deep-rooted hatred and fear. At a community meeting the next day, Marcus spoke passionately. We can't let fear divide us. This city belongs to all of us, no matter our skin color or background. We have to stand together, not just for ourselves, but for the future. Emily stood beside him, her hand gripping his tightly. The room was filled with a mix of support and skepticism, but for the first time in a long while, hope flickered. Back in the modeling world, Emily made a bold decision. She issued a public statement. I won't let fear or prejudice dictate who I love or what I believe in. Marcus saved my life, and now, I stand by him. The backlash was immediate. But so was the support. Messages of encouragement poured in from unexpected places, strangers, activists, even some colleagues who admired her courage. Amid the chaos, their bond deepened. Marcus and Emily learned to navigate the treacherous waters together, their love a beacon in the storm. But the shadows of doubt lingered in the streets, in the media, and in the hearts of those unwilling to change. Their story was far from over. The days after the public statement felt like walking on a razor's edge for both Marcus and Emily. Every sunrise brought new challenges, some expected, others surprising, but together, they faced the storm head-on, determined not to let hate win. Emily's decision had shattered the carefully constructed facade of her glamorous life. Her agency received backlash, some clients withdrew contracts, and a few major brands distanced themselves. But at the same time, Emily was flooded with messages from people who saw her courage and felt inspired. At the same time, Marcus's work at the hospital grew increasingly difficult. Patients, once respectful, sometimes questioned his ability or even his presence. A few incidents even escalated into hostile confrontations. One afternoon, Marcus was called to assist an emergency at a wealthy neighborhood. When he arrived, a group of bystanders whispered loudly about that paramedic, a veiled reference to his race. One man openly questioned his credentials. Marcus's calm was tested, but his professionalism never wavered. He treated the patient with the same dedication and skill that had saved Emily's life. Yet, the experience left a bitter taste in his mouth, a reminder that beneath the surface, prejudice still lingered. Emily, too, was confronting her own battles. Her modeling gigs had dwindled, and the pressure to conform was palpable. Derek Simmons, her controlling ex-manager, escalated his attempts to manipulate her, sending threatening texts, showing up uninvited, trying to convince her to end things with Marcus. One evening, Emily confided in Marcus, tears in her eyes. I feel like I'm losing everything, my career, my friends, my family's support. And yet, I can't walk away from you. I just don't know how much longer I can fight. Marcus held her tightly. We're fighting together, Emily. And no matter what, I believe in us. Meanwhile, Marcus's sister Tamara had become his fiercest ally. She organized community meetings, rallies, and fundraisers to support racial equality and fight against the hate swirling around them. Her passion was infectious, inspiring many to join their cause. One afternoon, Tamara received an unexpected visitor, a journalist named Rachel Mitchell, interested in telling their story. Rachel's presence sparked a new wave of media attention. Her articles and interviews painted a humanizing, honest picture of Marcus and Emily's struggle, not just as a sensational story, but as a deeper reflection of society's wounds. The public began to shift. Some who had been hostile started to reconsider their views. But not everyone was ready for change. Late one night, Marcus found a threatening note slipped under his door. "Stop stirring the pot, or you'll pay the price." The message was chilling, a stark reminder that their fight for justice came with real danger. Emily and Marcus decided it was time to take their story public on a larger scale. They agreed to participate in a televised interview, a risk, but an opportunity to reach hearts and minds. On the night of the interview, Emily sat beside Marcus on a small stage, bright lights illuminating their faces. The studio was packed with cameras and an expectant audience. When the host asked about the backlash, Marcus spoke with steady resolve. "Love and humanity should never be divisive. This fight isn't just about us, it's about breaking down the walls of fear and hate that still exist." Emily added, "I want people to understand that standing up for what's right isn't easy. But it's necessary. We all have a role in building a better future." Their words resonated deeply, sparking conversations nationwide. Messages of support poured in from all corners of the country, including unexpected allies. But not everyone was convinced. The night after the interview, Marcus's community center was vandalized again, this time with more violent graffiti. The threat had escalated. Faced with escalating danger, Marcus and Emily contemplated their next move. One evening, as they sat on the rooftop overlooking the city skyline, Emily asked quietly, "Do you think we can really make a difference?" Marcus looked out at the glittering lights, then back at her. "Change is never easy. But I believe our courage can inspire others to stand with us. We're not alone." Their journey was at a crossroads, the fight for justice had become personal, and the stakes had never been higher. Together, they vowed to face whatever came next, united by love, hope, and an unshakable belief in a better tomorrow. The city's dawn light spilled gently over the skyline, but inside Marcus's modest apartment, sleep was a stranger. The past weeks had been a relentless storm: threats, public battles, and personal sacrifices, all etched deeply into Marcus and Emily's hearts. Yet, there was an unspoken promise between them: to endure, to fight, and to believe. Marcus sat at the window, watching the streets awaken. Memories flooded in the early days when his life was simpler, when he never imagined that saving a stranger's life would thrust him into the epicenter of a societal battle. Emily joined him silently, slipping her hand into his. "We're stronger than the hate," she whispered. Marcus nodded, eyes still fixed on the city below. "But sometimes it feels like the darkness will never fade." Their words were interrupted by a knock at the door. Tamara stepped in, her face serious but hopeful. "There's a rally tonight," she said. "People want to stand with us, real support, not just words." Marcus's heart quickened. The movement they had sparked was growing, grassroots voices demanding justice, equality, and respect. At the rally, the crowd swelled beyond their expectations. People of all backgrounds gathered in solidarity. Signs waved proudly: "Love is not a crime, end racism now, and together we rise." Marcus took the stage, heart pounding but voice steady. "We've faced threats, fear, and doubt," he began. "But today, we show that courage and unity can overcome hate. This is not just my story or Emily's, it's the story of every person who's ever been judged by the color of their skin or the love they choose." Emily stepped forward, radiant despite the exhaustion. "Our love is a testament to hope that the next generation will live in a world where differences are celebrated, not feared." The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of energy sweeping through the city streets. That night, as they returned home, the weight of their journey felt lighter. They had sparked something bigger than themselves. But change doesn't come without sacrifice. News broke the next day that Derek Simmons was under investigation for harassment and threats against Emily. The modeling agency that once dismissed her began reconsidering their stance as public opinion shifted. Marcus received a commendation from the hospital for bravery and community service. Slowly but surely, respect replaced suspicion. Yet the most profound change was within people's hearts. Months later, at a community event celebrating diversity and unity, Marcus and Emily were honored guests. Children danced, laughter filled the air, and a mural depicting their journey adorned a city wall, a vibrant symbol of hope. Emily looked at Marcus, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you for saving me, not just that night, but every day since." Marcus smiled, pulling her close. We saved each other. Their story became more than a tale of heroism or romance, it was a beacon for anyone struggling against injustice, a reminder that courage, love, and persistence could reshape the world. The city was still imperfect, still flawed. But with every step they took, Marcus and Emily helped pave a path toward a brighter, more inclusive future. As the sun set, casting golden hues over the skyline, they stood hand in hand ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring, together.